They could not get her to eat for several days. No one understood why she had not died of hunger until the Indians, who were aware of everything, for they went sincerely about the house on their stealthy feet, discovered Rebecca would only like to eat the damped earth of the courtyard and the cake of whitewash that she picked off the walls with her nails. It was obvious that her parents, or whoever raised her, had scolded her for that habit, because she did it secretly and with a feeling of guilt, trying to put away so she could eat when no one was looking. From then on, they put her under an implacable watch. They threw Calgal onto the courtyard and rubbed hot chili on the walls, thinking they could defeat her pernicious vice with those methods. She showed such signs of astuteness and integrity to find some earth that Ushlo found herself forced to use more drastic methods. She put some orange juice and rhubarb into a pan that she left in the dew all night, and she gave her the dose the following day on an empty stomach. Although no one had told her that it was the specific remedy for the vice of eating earth, she thought that any bitter substance in an empty stomach would have to make the liver react. Rebecca was so rebellious and strong, in spite of her frailness, that they had to tie her up like a calf to make her swallow the medicine. And then they could barely keep her kicks or bear up under the strange hieroglyphics that she alternated with her bites and spitting, and that, according to what the scandalized Indians said, were the vilest obscantus that one could ever imagine in their language. When Ushril discovered that, she added whipping to the treatment. It was never established whether it was the rhubarb or the beatings that had an effect, or both of them together. But the truth was that in a few weeks, Rebecca began to show signs of recovery. She took part in the games of Accardio and Amaretta. Whoever treated her like an older sister, and she ate heartily, using the utensils properly. It was soon revealed that she spoke Spanish with as much fluency as an Indian language, that she had a remarkable ability for manual work, and that she could sing the waltz of the clocks with some very funny words that she herself had invented. It did not take long for them to consider her another member of the family. She was more affectionate to Ursula than any of her own children had been. She called Accardio and Menta brother and sister, Aureliano uncle, and Jose Accardio Buendina grandpa, so that she finally deserved as much as the others. The name of Rebecca Buendina, the only one that she ever had, that she bore with dignity until her death. One night, about the time that Rebecca was cured of the vice of eating earth and was brought to sleep in the other children's room, the Indian woman who slept with them awoke by chance and heard a strange, imminent sound in the corner. She got up in alarm, thinking that an animal had come into the room. Then she saw Rebecca in the rocker, sucking her fingers, with her eyes lit up in the darkness like one of those cats. Terrified, exhausted by her fate, Vizakino recognized in those eyes the sympathy of sickness, whose threat had obliged her and her brother to exile themselves forever from an age-old kingdom where they had been prince and princess. It was the insomnia plague. Katur, the Indian, was gone from the house by morning. His sister stayed because her fatalist heart told her that the lethal sickness would follow her, no matter what, to the farthest corner of the earth. No one understood Vizakino's alarm. If we do not ever sleep again, so much the better, Jose said, in good humor. That way, we can get more out of life. But the Indian woman explained that the most fearsome part of the sickness of insomnia was not the impossibility of sleeping, for the body did not feel any fatigue at all, but its extortable evolution towards a more critical manifestation, a loss of memory. She meant that when the sick person became used to his state of vigil, the recollection of his childhood began to erase from his memory. Then the name and notion of things. And finally, the identity of people and even the awareness of his own being, until he sank into a kind of idiocy that had no past. Jose Ricardo Buendino, dying with laughter, thought it was just a question of one of the many illnesses invented by the Indians' superstitions. But Urshel, just to be safe, took the precautions of isolating Rebecca from the other children. After several weeks, when Vizakino's terror seemed to have died down, Jose found himself rolling in bed, unable to fall asleep. They did not sleep a minute, but then the following day they felt so rested that they forgot about the bad night. Uderlano commented with surprise at lunchtime that he felt very well in spite of the fact that he had spent the whole night in laboratory guiding a brooch that he planned to give Ursula for her birthday. They did not become alarmed until the third day, when no one felt sleepy at bedtime, and then they realized they had gone more than 50 hours without sleep. The children are awake too, the Indian said with her fatalistic conversation. Once it gets into a house, no one can escape the plague. They had indeed contracted the illness of insomnia. Ursula, who had learned from her mother the medicinal value of plants, prepared and made them drink a brew of monkshood, but they could not get any sleep and spent the whole day dreaming on their feet. In the state of hallucinated lucidity, not only did they see the images of their own dreams, but some saw the images dreamed by others. It was as if the whole house were full of visitors. Sitting in her rocker in the corner of the kitchen, Rebecca dreamed that a man who looked very much like her, dressed in a white linen and with his shirt collar crossed by a golden button, was bringing her a bouquet of roses. He was accompanied by a woman with delicate hands who took one rose and put it in the child's hair. Ursula understood that the man and the woman were Rebecca's parents. But even though she made a great effort to recognize them, she confirmed her certainty that she had never seen them. In the meantime, though an oversight, that Jose never forgave himself, for the candy animals made in the house were still being sold in town. Children and adults sucked with delight on their delicious green little roosters of insomnia, the exquisite pink fish of insomnia, and the tender yellow ponies of insomnia. So that at dawn on Monday found the whole town awake. No one was alarmed at first. On the contrary, they were happy at not sleeping, because there's so much to do in Macundo in those days that there were barely enough time. They worked so hard soon they had nothing else to do, and they could be found at 3 o'clock in the morning with their arms crossed, counting the notes in the waltz of the clock. Those who wanted to sleep, not from fatigue, but because the nostalgia for dreams, tried all kinds of methods of exhausting themselves. They would gather together to converse endlessly, to tell over and over for hours on end the same joke, to complete to their limits of exasperation the story of Capon, which was an endless game in which the narrator asked if they wanted him to tell them the story of Capon. And when they answered yes, the narrator was that he had not asked them to say yes, but whether they wanted him to tell the story of Capon. When they answered no, the narrator told them that he had not asked them to say no, but whether they wanted him to tell them the story about the Capon. When they remained silent, the narrator told them he had not asked them to remain silent, but whether they wanted him to tell the story about the Capon. And no one could leave, because the narrator would say that he had not asked them to leave, but whether they wanted him to tell them the story about Capon. And so on and on in a vicious circle that lasted the entire night.